Marvel has their own company town in the suburbs of Atlanta, so they're pretty well established at this point. So the idea that you have to give them $1 billion to stay, I don't think that pans out.
Over the last several years, Georgia has become something of a movie destination, something of it's more and more movies are being filmed in Georgia. And as Ryan Zitgraff writes in Jacobin magazine, that glossy magazine covers are citing Georgia's attractive scenery and diverse people and places as the reason for the trend. So Ryan, welcome to the program, and it seems to me from the way that sentence is written, you don't think that is exactly the case.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Hollywood, a lot of it comes down to money.
Now, here's another thing that you mentioned, but it's just I'm having a lot of trouble figuring it out because I'm always told that what drives Hollywood is the woke mind virus. They want to trans our kids and all that kind of stuff. That's what drives Hollywood. But you're saying that's not the case.
Well, it would be if the money was there, but Hollywood sees green over woke, I believe.
Okay. Well, there you go. So if there was money in transing the kids, then maybe we would have something to worry about. But yeah. So, what is it then about Georgia that is bringing that's bringing Hollywood to film more shows over there? If it's not, the beautiful scenery and the people and the places.
Well, as you know, there's been a lot of jobs, a lot of companies moving jobs to the South over the last few decades. And some of that has to do with people themselves moving, to the South. But a lot of it has to do with ununionized labor, the lack of unions in the South, although that seems to be slowly changing. But also tax incentives. Louisiana kind of pioneered this in the South when it comes to offering Hollywood 10-20% off their productions when they film in the state. And so actually around 2004, 2005, there was a movie Ray that was the biopic of Ray Charles.
Oh, yeah.
And he's from Georgia. And people were upset in Georgia that they decided to film it in Louisiana because of the tax credits. So Sonny Perdue, who was the governor of Georgia back then, said, hey, we need to compete with this. So they started offering one of the biggest tax credits among states to do 20% flat tax off for productions. Plus, if you use the little peach logo and put that at the end of the credits, that's an extra 10%. So 30% tax credit on all productions was pretty huge. So between that and the lack of unions, that's a big reason why Hollywood moved to Georgia.
Jeez. For a peach logo in the credits, you get a 10% tax credit on anything filmed in the state of Georgia.
On top of 20%.
On top of 20%
they give you anyway.
Already. But now, so does this mean that if I were to go to Georgia and film a little documentary about a local, ironworkers union, that I would be able to benefit from, and the union would be able to benefit from that?
Sure, yeah, come and make it.
Okay. Is there so there's not a minimum there's not a minimum size that the project has to be?
Well, you have to. I believe you apply with the state office. And I don't know. I mean, there's a chance that if it's just you making your own little film, they won't do it. There probably is a minimum, but I'm not aware of what all the qualifications. But yeah, you apply for the tax credit through the state office.
And so how much money is being spent by Georgia taxpayers, by the public in Georgia, on the film industry?
It's about $1 billion a year. So it is as more productions come down and migrate here. Yeah, it's costing $1 billion in taxpayer money a year.
And has Georgia been able to, run the numbers and say, okay, look, yeah, we're spending $1 billion of your dollars to get a peach logo in the credits, but also, there are all these other good things. Like what is the, how is the cost benefit analysis of this looking?
Well, there is dispute over they use a certain kind of multiplier. Different economists use different numbers to try to say, here's the financial impact, of this industry being here. And you also see this a lot when you talk about using taxpayer dollars to bring in sports stadiums, for instance, the Braves moved their stadiums a few years ago and they're like, well, it'll have this effect on the local economy. And so the multiplier that they use is something like 3.5 times whatever is spent. So that is like the impact of tourism and all of these people coming in from other states to work on these productions. But there's been some professors here in Georgia who have studied the numbers and said that this 3.5 number is not true. Like that. Perhaps doubling, so maybe 2 times. But so the state is sort of using inflated numbers to justify it.
Right. And when if you hear, okay, well, we spent $1 billion, but the economy got $2 billion, that might sound immediately like, okay, that's not the worst thing. But what you have to think about is kind of the cost benefit. Say, okay, so the state of Georgia, we are dedicated to spending $1 billion, okay? And then the question becomes, what should we spend it for, and what would be the most valuable and the best use of that $1 billion? And there are other things that the state of Georgia needs, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, with, of course, definitely, especially with the Governor Kemp been cutting higher education funds, and look, yeah, healthcare. I mean, you name it. There's plenty of stuff that Georgia could use for that money.
And so, why why are they not doing that? Investing in investing in healthcare or stuff like that, maybe public transportation in Georgia. Instead of doing that, they're saying no, we should send money to the Hollywood elites. That's what they're doing. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think they're for one. They're trying to keep the film industry here because there are other states that are offering more and more tax credits. In fact, Nevada recently, I think Mark Wahlberg is trying to get Hollywood to move to Nevada. So Nevada is offering a lot of tax credits. I know Alabama has considered it. In this past session, there was consideration to try to compete with Georgia for those tax credits. So they're worried that if they cut the tax credits, that Hollywood will leave. And I think that's sort of a mixed argument because, I mean, they have built these big studios in Atlanta. And once you build these big structures, it's a little harder to leave.
Right.
Tyler Perry built his Tyler Perry Studios. Marvel has their own basically company town in the suburbs of Atlanta. So they're pretty well established at this point. So, the idea that you have to give them $1 billion to stay, I don't think that pans out.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Right. Yeah. Once you get them there, it might make sense to actually get them there. But once you do get them there and they're starting to invest all of this money in infrastructure and they have already invested all this money in infrastructure and stuff, it becomes, the opportunity cost for them, it becomes more and more difficult to justify moving away. Right. And so, and this has been really part of a trend in in states and municipalities across the country, really just kind of prostrating themselves in front of in front of big companies, begging for them to move, a manufacturing center or a new headquarters here, and we'll give you all of this public money to do that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that trend and kind of what that speaks to in our culture?
Well, for puns, they want to be business friendly. They want to seem like they're bringing jobs. But the problem is that that they kind of leave themselves at the mercy of these companies, and you have all of these states together sort of bending over backwards to do whatever the businesses want, and they're sort of held hostage, or they feel like they're held hostage. But you see, I'm sure, in Alabama, just like Georgia, over the last decade, that there's been these big car manufacturers, and like here in Georgia, they're building a Rivian plant near Atlanta, and it is insane how much tax credits they're giving to this company to go. But the problem is, again, is these politicians are also definitely afraid of losing jobs, that these companies are going to move elsewhere. So there's not much. They're just worried about saving their butts, and so they'll do whatever it takes. Here, free money, and it doesn't always pan out.
Right. Oh, one more question. I know Adam has a question, but are there any, so in some of these tax giveaways, there are strings attached to them, like, okay, look, we're going to give you $1 billion, but it's not just free money. You've got to, pay this amount of wages. You've got to make sure that your kids, that your workers have childcare and this kind of stuff. Are there any strings attached in that way, worker protections?
Not really. I mean, in fact, one issue is that, in Georgia, because of the lack of unions, when, the movie production that happens in like New York and California, a lot more of those jobs are union. Those are kind of more unionized states. And then here, there are about 20,000 film and TV production jobs, but only about a little over 8,000 are unionized. And, these companies promise a certain amount of jobs. Like, for instance, Tyler Perry's studio, his studios have promised something like 8,000 jobs. But right now there's only about 400, and there's no mechanism for the state to be like, well, where are these jobs? It's just a promise. And they just yeah, sure, we believe you.
Yeah, that's exactly, you spoke about what I was going to ask about, which was the differences in the unionization rates between, these different sources of industry. And really what you just said, I think, is huge, that there is a lack of accountability, that, companies make these big promises, politicians make these big promises, and we're lucky if it's even tracked, if anyone even is paying attention to see, if the promise comes true, much less if there's any accountability afterwards, if said promises aren't filled. But you spoke a little bit about the differences in the unionization rates. And of course, that's one of the reasons why industries come to the South. They're trying to flee union power. And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about like the union landscape there in the Georgia film industry. What are the states of the unions there? I'm a member of IATSE, so of course, I'm very interested in anything happening with IATSE over in Georgia. But did you have any more thoughts there? Just what's the conditions like for the unions there, and are they able to seize on this industry growth and try to grow, or are they really encircled?
I think IATSE has several thousand members here. And SAG-AFTRA also have several thousand, but again, among 20,000. With this strike that just ended, it's been interesting because you've seen more of a rally. I mean, Atlanta, it was sort of a flashpoint for the strike, and so you had union members and non-union members getting together to to call for better conditions and better pay. There was a photo, I think, that was kind of amazing that came out of Atlanta. There was a stuntman that came out in a suit, and he was on fire having a sign, strike sign. And that was just really eye-catching. It made headlines everywhere, and it was incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so during the strike, though, it was rough for a lot of these non-union workers.
Right.
A lot of them were doing Uber. I'm a part-time trivia host, and there was a bunch of actors that were, started doing trivia hosting. A lot of these guys were just struggling. They were just taking, low-paid gig work, and I'm very positive. I feel like there's more solidarity than there was before, and there's just more awareness of the union, non-union, and a lot of those people came together. So even though we had this strike and it was hard on a lot of workers, I think there's a lot of positive vibes in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, we know that strikes can be very educational. As tough and difficult and grueling as they can be, folks learn through struggle oftentimes. And so if, there was more solidarity, more connections and relationships have been built, that's promising, I think, for the future, because if these jobs are going to be there, and if the politicians are going to keep, bribing the companies to keep the jobs there, then I think it's up to us as a movement to organize those jobs. And it's easier said than done in states like Alabama and Georgia, but that's kind of the mission in front of us. And so, that's what I'm hoping to see is the growth of IATSE and SAG and all the entertainment industry unions over in Georgia and anywhere else they come, right? That, that's the thing. We as a movement have to organize in a way where companies cannot flee us, right? Wherever they go, we have to be there. And I think that's really important for us as a movement.
Another thing I was going to say was that I think a lot of times in the film industry, there is this feeling that you're lucky to be there, that, this is this big glamorous industry, right, and you should sacrifice to be a part of it. There's a lot of unpaid interns. There's a lot of, low wage, bad working conditions. And it was sort of like you sucked it up because, here you are, the movie industry, it's the greatest, right?
Right.
But I think that one thing that this strike has really done is sort of shine the light on the low pay and working conditions for so many people that work in the film industry. And I think there is more of a recognition that they need to fight. They deserve more.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. One story that I've been tracking that I don't think we're going to talk about today, but I would really like to talk about. So if you have any contacts in this industry, I'd be interested in talking offline about it. But there has always been a similar dynamic in Japan in the anime industry, right? And I think it's kind of worse in Japan in the anime industry with like long working hours, terrible pay, very precarious. There's kind of just hordes of people that are ready to take your place if you can't if you can't hack it. And the past 2 weeks, there's really been a lot of that kind of boiling over at, in particular, Mappa Studios. They've had a lot of animators going public on Twitter talking about how terrible it is, and depictions of suicide from these people, like they're drawing themselves dead and stuff like that. So it's been really kind of graphic and disturbing and unfortunate over there. So I've reached out to some folks that I think may be able to come on, but if you know anybody else, happy to talk offline about that. But that kind of stuff happens in glamour industries, right? Exactly for the reasons that you said. People grow up and we are kind of our life is kind of centered around culture and movies and stuff. And so you grow up and you see the TV and you see the people on the TV more than you see, other professions. And so that's kind of the first thing that you think of that you would want to do. And along with that comes, the kind of allure of fame or the potential of fame. And so it's very easy for workers in these industries to get exploited.
Yeah, and I think another issue that's really mobilized people in the industry is the threat of AI, and the fact that companies were looking more at not replacing artists, using AI artwork, but even AI background actors, extras, and the fact that you could use an actor's voice. Using AI, you don't have to bring him in a studio. You can just use AI to replicate it. There's a lot of issues around that I think really mobilize a lot of people. And it is scary because there is a lot of creative jobs that are under threat by AI. And I don't think that's going to go down anytime soon. Right.
Ryan, I appreciate your time this morning. We're going to have to get you back on at some point because if I'm remembering correctly, you grew up in Alabama as a Pentecostal, isn't that right?
You got that half right. I lived in Alabama for 2 years, but I'm actually from Central Illinois. Gotcha.
But you did grow up as a Pentecostal,
which is kind of like the Alabama of Illinois, I'll say.
Right. So
yes, I did grow up Pentecostal.
Yeah, and I grew up in a similar way. That they don't call it Pentecostal in North Alabama; it's called a different thing. But the gist is the same, and so it's always we're kind of a rare breed, being public pro worker, kind of on the left, having grown up in that environment. So we'll have to talk about that at some other time. Ryan Zitgraf, appreciate your time this morning. Where can people find you?
You can find me in Jacobin Magazine. I write for Compact, and I'm a democracy reporter for a news nonprofit called Atlanta Civic Circle. So I've been writing some about labor for them and democracy, which is another thing that we care about.
All right. Ryan Zitgraf, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. So... bad stuff given away. One of the articles that he linked to in his piece in Jacobin, the piece is called Georgia Became the Hollywood of the South Through Massive Corporate Tax Breaks. One of the articles that he linked to in that piece said that the tax subsidies to Hollywood in Georgia are now $330 per household.
Wow.
It's 5% of the state budget. Like, 1 out of every $20 that the Georgia government spends goes to Hollywood. That's just crazy. Crazy stuff. So we'll keep an eye on that. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.